Good morning, everybody. How have you been this week? Well, we keep learning about new things that are going on in the world that we never would have believed. And the title of this week's lesson is Jesus Has Risen, Believe It or Not. And there's a story in the Bible about a disciple called Doubting Thomas. And at this time in our lives, there are lots of things going on that we would say, I can't believe it. Anyway, that's what I keep saying. And I've lived a lot longer than you have, and I'm still saying, I don't believe it. So, in the Bible, there's a story about one of the disciples that says, I won't believe that Jesus has risen until I see the nail wounds in Jesus' hands and put my fingers into them and place my hand into his side. So 8 days later, the disciples were together, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly Jesus was standing among them and greeting them. Then he said to Thomas, Put your finger into my hands. Put your hand into my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe. Then Thomas said, My Lord and my God. Then Jesus told him, You believe because you have seen me, but blessed are those who haven't seen me and believe anyway. Jesus' disciples saw him do many other miracles besides the ones told about in the book of John. So we have this saying after that about being a doubting Thomas. And I don't know if you've heard your grandparents or your parents talk about a doubting Thomas. Tends to be somebody who doesn't believe things. They want you to show it, prove it to me. Now, could you believe that we would have 6 to 8 inches of snow on April 16th? I couldn't believe it. Would you believe that we wouldn't have school from March until May? That March would be the end of the school year? Who would have believed that? Who would have believed that you couldn't find toilet paper in the stores? I never heard of such a thing. My dad is 88 years old. He couldn't believe it. I said, Dad, you got to believe it. Back in 93, we had a big flood in the town of Dowds. Who would have believed that the water would go as far as Moore's Grocery and into the lunchbox building? So that's kind of where Thomas is coming from in the Bible. He says, who could believe this? Who could believe that Jesus is alive? We saw him up on the cross. He had nails in his hands and in his sides to keep him up there. So that's one of the things that as Christians we do, is we believe in things that can't be proven. We believe because Jesus tells us. We believe because we see the miracles that Jesus performs. So I've sent a copy of Doubting Thomas in the mail to you, so you'll have something to remember him by. And think about all the miracles we talk about in the Bible that we believe because the Bible says so. Because there were people there to see that they happened. Like when we talk about in Sunday school that Jesus walked on water. Well, you and I weren't there to believe it, to see it ourselves, but we believe because that's what the Bible says. And we believe the people who were there. Jesus turned water into wine. That's pretty amazing too. Jesus healed people. He healed Lazarus. He brought him up from the dead. He healed the girl who was dying, and the father came to get Jesus and take him to his house to help her heal. And the big one, the big miracle, is when Jesus rose from the dead, which is what we're talking about this week after Easter.